So we have International Fight Week on our hands, UFC 317. I'm going to be giving you my picks and breakdowns of every single fight from the early prelims to the main card. If you just want the main card picks, I'm going to post another video with just those on my page, so you don't have to wait for those here. Now, starting off with the early prelims, we have Christopher Ewert versus Jackson McVey. Ewert is a late replacement today because Cedric Dumas was facing charges, some domestic issue charges. To give you some background, he's been a whole mess. I don't even really know why he's still on the UFC roster. He was found in a dog crate behind in the backyard of his current girlfriend's house when police were trying to search for him. So yeah, he's a whole nother ordeal. I think this fight is upgraded, really. Although Christopher Ewert was supposed to be debuting on Dana White Contender Series and fighting for a contract. So he's been promoted to this first fight of the International Fight Week. So a big opportunity for him. And Jackson McVey also making his debut. So really, this is like a Contender Series fight. Ewert is known for his big power. He has around 6 knockouts already. But neither of these guys have a lot of fights to show for. Jackson McVey, on the other hand, is known to be a finisher by submission. He does have some knockout wins. But both these guys are underexperienced here. I do think that Ewert has the striking advantage on the feet. Of course, McVey has the ground advantage. So it really depends on how that plays out. I think Christopher Ewert will have the advantage here just because his size looks a little bit bigger. So I think if he has any sort of strength or decent takedown defense, I think he will carry this away. So I'm going with Christopher Ewert by decision or possibly knockout, considering these guys trying to prove themselves. They're going to be taking some risk. You know how that goes. So I would probably say Ewert by decision, but knockout would also not be a bad play here. The next fight, we have Diniz versus Alvin Hines. Alvin Hines is making his debut here. Diniz is a Dana White Contender Series product. You know, Diniz has some serious power. He's not going to throw any long combinations together. He's going to give you some 1 or 2 punch combinations, some heavy low kicks. Those looked pretty good in his fight against Carl Williams. He is coming off a loss to Topuria by Dr. Stoppage. But Topuria is no joke. Topuria is a good opponent. On the other end, Alvin Hines, you know, he is undefeated in the LFA. But if you watch his fights, he looks very stiff. He kind of reminds me of kind of like a lost uncle, you know, your long lost uncle that you don't know what he's doing, and you see him fighting, and you're like, oh, shit, didn't know that's what he was doing now. But yeah, I think that Alvin Hines just looks stiff. I think Diniz is going to have the clear speed advantage. Is going to have the clear advantage all around on the feet. You know, Hines may want to try to get this to the ground if he can, because he is much bigger. He's very, very wide base, very wide build. But, you know, even his opponents in the LFA, if you look, I went through them, they're 17-18 collective record. So I don't put too much stock in his LFA undefeated record here. I think Diniz has the clear advantage. I think that's why he is the bigger favorite. I'm going Diniz here by decision, I would say. You know, he may catch him. I don't know. We haven't seen Hines face too much pressure back or some serious power, so he may be susceptible to being knocked out. But I would say Diniz by decision here. The next fight ending our early prelims is Jacoby Smith versus Niko Price. Jacoby Smith is a huge favorite here, and rightly so. I'm going Jacoby Smith by knockout. I'm really confident on this pick. I'm sure that when the lines come out, it'll be in minus probably 200, 250 by knockout for Jacoby Smith. He's just faster. He's more explosive. He's more athletic than Niko. You know, Niko's getting on the older side. Jacoby's just younger. Just all around, just a better fighter at this point in his career. Niko's coming off, you know, he's lost 6 of his last 8. 5 of those have been by knockout. So, you know, Smith is coming off a knockout of Preston Parsons by a left hook earlier this year in January. So I don't see any way to victory for Niko here. I think Jacoby's really going to have his way. I would say knockout in round 1. He just looks all around better and just more explosive, more athletic. Like I said, I don't see any other way this going for Niko Price and Jacoby Smith. In our next fight, we have Terrence McKinney versus Vyacheslav Borshchev. Now, Terrence is coming out at minus 180, and Borshchev is coming out at plus 150 underdog. I like the underdog here quite a bit. I like Borshchev by probably knockout here, I would say. Borshchev is a very tough guy to put out. McKinney likes to start fast. Majority of his wins come in the first round. He's never been to a decision. So, his fast start is dangerous, of course, for anyone. But Borshchev is a dog, man. He's tough. He's hard to put away. He's fought people to the likes of, someone recently, Nazim Sadikov. He went to a draw with him. That's a legit fighter. I mean, that's a championship caliber fighter. He's lost to Chase Hooper, Tom Nolan. These are some serious talents, and so I think his record can be deceiving. So keep that in mind when you look at his 8-5 record. He works with Team Alpha Male. That's a great, Jim Uriah Faber's there. A lot of other top-notch fighters work out there. On the other end, Terrence works out at Fusion XL, whatever the fuck that is. People like Torres Finney and Val Woodburn work out there. So a little bit of a difference of a gym, if you ask me. Phil Rowe works out there. So, take that as you will. I think this is a live underdog for sure. Even potentially going beyond 1.5 rounds as they have it here on DraftKings. I do think Borshchev, he's only been finished once by submission. This is really Borshchev's fight to lose. I'm big on Borshchev in this fight, actually. I think he may even take it to the ground, considering he works at Alpha Male, who's really big on those double leg takedowns. Kind of stifle McKinney's power, kind of wear him down, and take away some of that power from the first round. So I have Borshchev here. I think Terrence McKinney is just really only dangerous in that first round. Otherwise, I think Borshchev is going to have that experience. He's going to have the better training, the better camp, and just be hard to put away, which is McKinney's really only method to victory here. In the next fight, we have Tracy Cortez versus Viviane Araujo. We have Tracy Cortez in at a -250 favorite. She is the younger fighter here. She's 31 to Araujo's 38 years old. Cortez is coming off some good, solid fights that are really going to help her grow as a fighter. She did beat Jazz Divisius, which is a very solid fighter. She's looked fantastic. She is fantastic since 2023. She did drop her last fight against Rose Namajunas, which, of course, is no one to be ashamed to have a loss to. On the other side, Viviane Araujo, like I said, she is pushing. She's getting older. She's 38. She did win her last fight against Karine Silva, which was an impressive fight. She's going to have her, as usual, her Muay Thai stance. But I think Tracy's going to be the faster fighter. She is going to be the faster fighter here. The one threat she needs to watch out for is Araujo likes to engage the clinch, and work you up against the fence and hold you there. And if Tracy doesn't have some urgency to get off the fence in the clinch, it could easily be squeezed out. Each round could be squeezed out by Araujo here. So Tracy just needs to avoid that. Keep her range. Don't let her get in too close. And Araujo isn't really going to have a lot of volume. She isn't really going to pose any threat to Tracy, I don't think, on the feet, unless it is that clinch work up against the fence. So as long as she stays off the fence, I think that Tracy's going to be the clearly faster fighter here. She's going to keep it on the feet, and she's going to have a pretty solid victory here by decision. In our next fight, we have Hyder Amil versus Jose Delgado. Delgado's coming in as a small favorite, -162. And when we get to this fight on the card, not to say that the other fights aren't good. These are very solid fights early, or even from the early prelims on until this one. They're solid fights. But when we get to this fight, the rest of the card fucking bangs. Every single one. Every single fight. So this is where I start to get really excited. I may spend a little bit more time on these fights. Some people may be surprised that Jose Delgado is a small favorite here at -162. Or, they may think that he should be a little bit larger. And I can understand that completely. Delgado's explosive. He's young. He's one of the biggest prospects in the UFC right now. I actually saw him at Vegas, the Apex, Vegas 102, Gregory versus Cannonier, or Rodriguez versus Cannonier. He's fast. He's big, too, for the division. He's probably going to tower over Amil here. But Amil is someone you can't sleep on. I mean, he's undefeated. If you watch his last fight, he did not stop at any point in that fight. I mean, he kept on pushing. I mean, he grinds out these fights. He grinded out that fight. He does not. He just doesn't stop, and that can be concerning if Delgado isn't able to make sure his footwork is on point. he's working around, getting off the fence and working back to the center of the octagon and making sure that he's keeping those teep kicks and keeping his distance, keeping his range, and keeping the fight at his pace. And I think that a lot of Hyder's method of victories, the way he gets to victory, is just overwhelming his opponents. And I think that works well against most opponents, but I don't think that works well against elite opponents. And I think Delgado's elite. I really do. I think that Delgado has what it takes to put Delgado away. And the reason why I think Delgado will probably win by knockout is because Hyder's willing to trade. I think it's a big mistake when you're facing Delgado. I think Delgado has some serious striking skills. He works a lot with the MMA lab. We know, Sean O'Malley works out there. Mario Batista works out there. Benson Henderson. He has a great support system there. But we can't sleep on Hyder. That's the reason why I think this line is the way it is. We've seen the veteran come through, even though he only has 11 fights, only one more fight than Delgado. He is the older guy here. We've seen some of the veterans come through, the older guys, and beat some of the younger guys. Think about, just last week, Fiziev versus Bahamondes. Or what about Usman and Buckley? We had Minfield and C, Simon and Smotherland, Volk versus Diego. So while that's a concern, these veterans I'm mentioning here are just, they're elite themselves. Hyder isn't that guy. So again, while I think that Hyder's pressure can potentially pose problems to Delgado if he isn't, making sure he's getting out of those tight positions against the fence where Amil can make it dirty, I think Delgado will be fine as long as he can get it out of that. So I'm going Delgado by knockout because Amil, I think, will trade with him, and I think that will be a huge mistake. Next up, we have Jack Hermansson versus Gregory Hobocop Rodriguez. Now, if you're not aware, I'm a huge Gregory Rodriguez fan, if you can't tell from this here. Actually, I've met Gregory a few times. My wife has actually done a portrait for Gregory. So that's just to say there may be a little bit of bias in this breakdown. I try not to make that a factor here, but just to give you a heads up. Of course, I like Gregory here. I like him by decision. A lot of people may be more inclined to go by knockout because of how serious his power is. Gregory has enough power to knock out anyone in the middleweight division, without a doubt. But the biggest handicap with Gregory Rodriguez is his chin. He hasn't really improved his defense, his head movement. He's still susceptible to being knocked out, leaving his chin up. Not even necessarily leaving his chin up, just leaving his chin exposed. That's what he got caught with the Cannonier. He started fast, had a fantastic first round, but by round 2 and 3, he already looked kind of gassed. And that's a big handicap for Gregory. If you're gassed and you also have a tendency to get caught, that's not a good combination. It's a recipe for disaster. But Hermansson, he's coming off a little bit of a layoff. He's older than Gregory by about 5 years here. I don't think that Gregory's going to face anything in his direction that's really going to put him on edge. I think Gregory's going to have he likes to put his pressure on his opponents. I think he's going to have his way with Jack here. And if Jack wants to take it to the ground where he does some of his best work, Gregory's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artist, 2-time world champion. I think people forget that. 2-time world champion Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artist. So I also feel confident if he does go to the ground for Gregory here. And, this isn't to say that Gregory isn't tough. His chin is susceptible. He's susceptible to gassing as well, like I said. But he's a tough fighter. Think about that Chidi fight. If you remember that cut he got right here between the eyes, but came back to win that fight. He is tough. There's nothing against Gregory's toughness. It's just that he is more susceptible to being caught and put out. I just don't think Hermansson has that power that's going to threaten Gregory to be put out. And that's why I think that Gregory at a minus 218 on DraftKings here is accurate. I like the over actually on this fight. I wouldn't be surprised if Gregory does catch him and put him away by KO. But I like Gregory here by decision. Next up, we have Peyton Talbott versus Felipe Lima. This is really a new generation fight here. Both these guys are young. They're explosive. They have immense potential. The sky is the limit for these guys, really. So this is one of those matchups where we may look back on and realize that both these guys are sitting at the top of the division for a while. Both Peyton Talbott or Felipe Lima is 27. I believe Peyton Talbott is 26. So, yeah, these guys are the new generation. They're both explosive. They both look great on the feet. Peyton Talbott had a setback against Barcelos. But I will say, Barcelos is no slouch. I think people forget how good Barcelos is. His previous fight was also another testament to Barcelos against Garbrandt. He looked great there too. He's fought Said Nurmagomedov and Umar Nurmagomedov. He's no slouch, right? He has incredible experience. Should Peyton Talbott have won that fight? Absolutely. He has no excuse to have not won that fight. He was like a minus 1,100 favorite, something stupid like that. He shouldn't have lost that fight, but he did. The issue is, if they stand on the feet, I think Peyton Talbott actually has the advantage on the feet. I think Peyton Talbott can win a fight if he was to remain on the feet with Felipe Lima. I just think Felipe Lima is going to be able to take this to the ground and keep him there. I don't think Talbott's able to improve his ground game in this short a period of time. It takes more than just a month or two. It's going to take a year or 2 years to really improve a substantial amount on the ground. So if Felipe Lima wants to win this fight, I do think he's going to have to take it to the ground, which I do think he will. And I think he will win this by decision. Now, if they do end up staying on the feet or somehow Peyton Talbott does defend those takedowns, I do think Talbott has the opportunity to win this, and that's why he probably isn't that large of an underdog. But Felipe, he works out with Khamzat Chimaev. He's on a 14-fight win streak. He just beat Muhammad Naimov, which we saw last week, who had a good win against Bogdan Grad. He fought Miles John who's 15-3. He's fighting Gene Matsumoto next. So, he's fought some serious competition and had his way. I think he's legit. Simply is what I'm saying here. I think he's legit. And I think Talbott, I don't know if he's as focused as Lima. I think he has just as much talent and has just as much ability as Lima here. But I just don't know if he has the focus and the drive as Lima does. And the skill set, really, all around. I do think he's better on the feet, like I said. But when it comes to that ground game, he looked a little helpless there against Barcelos. And I think Felipe Lima will expose that or exploit that in this fight. So I'm going Lima here by decision. Next up, we have Beneil Dariush versus Renato Moicano. Of course, Moicano can't afford to lose. He's a minus 122 favorite. Dariush is coming in at a plus 102 underdog. It's really a pick 'em here. They're both the same age, although Dariush seems like he should be older. Moicano, a great ground game, has looked better on the feet each fight. This is probably the toughest fight for me to call on the card, actually. I don't like that Dariush is coming off 2 knockout losses. I will say that. I think Moicano, of course, he had to drop his last fight to the pound-for-pound king, of course, and Makhachev, but we don't put too much stock into that because it was Makhachev. So, Moicano has looked good. He's had some good momentum. I think he has the momentum coming into this fight compared to Dariush. Dariush did beat Gamrot, who spams takedowns, as we know, and he did well against him. So that can create some concern there. But, Moicano, I think Moicano's improving. I think he will be able to get him to the ground. I'm leaning towards Moicano here by decision. I just don't know how this will play out. It's just very, very tough. And I think that's why the lines suggest this. And I think Dariush, if he can defend those takedowns and, maybe keep those push kicks and keep his distance, I think he can find that, can find his way on the feet and potentially take this away from Moicano. But I like Moicano here. I think he has the momentum. I think he will be able to take him down, and I think he will put on a pretty good performance here in the spotlight. Next up, we have Brandon Royval versus Joshua Van. Van's making a quick turnaround here from his fight against Bruno Silva. He is the favorite in this, actually, minus 120 to Brandon Royval's plus 100. Van is coming off a masterclass performance a couple weeks ago against Bruno Silva. He showed us exactly what we already knew. He has solid jabs, good straight rights. His vision is outstanding. That's really what makes him be able to keep his range, have good counter strikes. Just really good footwork even as well. I mean, just very, very slick boxing. Just all around fantastic and fun fighter to watch on the feet. Now, One thing that makes me hesitant on Joshua Van is he is oftentimes heavy on the boxing and kind of doesn't work the lower half or the body. He does work the body with his hands, but not with his leg kicks. That's kind of concerning. He also sometimes gets a slow start. He does seem to do better here recently, but he does get a slow start and sometimes allow that first round to slip away. And we cannot have that happen. You cannot let the first round slip away to someone to the caliber of Brandon Royval. He'll take it away. He'll find his flow state, and it will be, he'll have to call it a day if Brandon Royval finds his flow state. And on top of that, Royval is just immensely more experienced. He's a championship caliber. I mean, he's number one contender right now. He hasn't faced anything close. Van hasn't faced anything close to what Royval has faced. I mean, Royval's faced Pantoja, Moreno, Kai Kara France. It's just not the same level of talent that Van has seen, and you can't underestimate how much that plays into experience and just all around fight IQ. And I think I like Royval a lot, even beyond that. I like him a lot when it comes to matchmaking and just the matchup in general. He's long, he keeps the range, he has a lot of volume. I think that's going to stymie. That's going to stymie Van in his attempt to get into that flow state. He's going to have a lot thrown at him. In fact, in his loss against Charles Johnson, I see a lot of similarities, interestingly enough, between Charles Johnson and Royval. They're both long, they're both tall. I think Royval is going to have this pretty easily, actually. Not that he's going to knock Van out or anything. I wouldn't be surprised if he did, but I think he's going to have his way with Van. He's older, more experienced, and just all around, I think, going to be better on the feet. So I like Royval pretty big here against Van. I think recency bias is playing a big role into Van's favoritism here. I'm hoping that does swell, because that will be great for us to bet on that underdog in Royval. Even think about Royval's last performance against Tatsuro Taira. I mean, he looked fantastic there too. He did struggle with some of the takedowns that Taira threw at him, but Van's not going to be throwing those takedowns. He's going to be wanting to trade on the feet as well. So I think that Royval's length, I think his volume, I think his experience, all of that really set him up for success here. And so I'm excited for this fight, but I think Van's turnarounds also, not having an actual camp to face someone like Royval, it doesn't seem like it should be favoring Van here by whatsoever. So I like Royval big here. Next up, we have our co-main event in Alejandro Pantoja versus Kai Kara France. It's going to be an electric fight. It's going to be a fun fight. Pantoja does not get the respect he deserves. I know people say this, but he seriously doesn't. He's coming in at a minus 245 favorite here, rightly so. Maybe he should be larger. Kai Kara France, he's his most dangerous in round one. Practically all his finishes, except a few, come in round one. His last fight against Urseg, for example, he knocked him out in the first round. Great performance. Urseg, I like Urseg a lot, but his last couple of fights, he hasn't thrown that much volume. He's just not as much of a threat compared to someone like Pantoja. Kai Kara France is coming off out of his last three. He's dropped his last two. He's lost his last two out of 3 fights. So that's something to consider. They've already fought once in the Ultimate Fighter. Pantoja got the better end of that exchange. Took that from Kai Kara France. He also beat Moreno in that season. And, if I go through Pantoja's last 6 or 7 fights, he's beat Manel Kopp, Brandon Royval, Alex Perez, Brandon Moreno, Brandon Royval again, Steve Urseg, and then Kai Asakura in his last fight. I mean, he's coming on his 4th title defense. He's 13-3 in the UFC. He's won by 8 knockouts, 11 submissions, 10 decisions. So he can really beat you anywhere in any fashion. He's one of the best fighters, if not, he really should be higher on the pound for pound list. It can't be understated how underrated he is. I like him big here. I like him against Kai Kara France, who has 3 submission losses. Pantoja is just so good at getting you down, getting your back, and submitting you. I mean, Pantoja's beat 9 out of the top 10 guys. he beats Kai France here, he'll just solidify that legacy he's been building in the past 5 years when he hasn't lost a fight. Right, he hasn't lost a fight in the last 5 years. So, yeah, I like Pantoja big here. I think he's going to win by submission. I think Kai France's biggest threat is in that first round. I think Pantoja will weather that storm and then take it away as the fight continues on. So I like Pantoja here by submission. In our main event, as you know, we have Ilia Topuria and Charles Olivera. Sadly, I have to say I'm taking Ilia Topuria in this by knockout and even potentially in the first round. First or second round, I have Ilia by knockout. Ilia's coming in a minus 470 favorite. The over-under is of 1.5 rounds. I would say under 1.5 rounds, which is a plus 114 bet there. So that may be worth looking into. You know, as we know, Olivera is a fantastic finisher. He's looked even better on the feet in recent years. We obviously know he's the most decorated submission artist in the game has ever seen, in fact. But don't forget that Ilia Topuria, I mean, his background is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's a black belt Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artist. Not saying he's Oliveira's level, but he built a fair well on the ground. You know, we think about his fight against Bryce Mitchell. I mean, he ragdolled him for one and then submitted him. You know, we know Mitchell was great on the ground as well. Now, there may be some concern with him moving up and not being so big, but think back about that Bryce Mitchell fight. I mean, he's clearly stronger than everyone in that weight class, so I think he will. His strength won't be an issue here, especially against Olivera, who isn't really known to have, you know, immense strength here. He's more crafty. Again, Olivera, Hall of Famer, but I just, as you know probably from previous fights, he leaves his chin exposed. Very similar kind of Gregory, and what I mentioned earlier. You know, he's got caught by Michael Chandler. He got caught by Justin Gaethje. And Topuria is just, I think, way beyond these Gaethje and Chandler, right? I think both of them, they're great strikers, especially Gaethje more so than Chandler. But I think Topuria is just on another level. I think his boxing is so crisp, and so it's just really fantastic to watch him work the body, work his range, get in tight. I think that he's going to do like he does really all these fighters. He works them back up against the fence, is willing to eat a few shots and really unload on them. I think he's going to be able to do that same thing against Olivera, and I think he's going to catch him and put him out. You know, Olivera's getting older. This is Topuria's prime. I think that he's going to try to exchange with Topuria, and it's going to be to his detriment. So yeah, I have Topuria here by knockout. So we have a great set of fights. Like I said, this is a fantastic card from top to bottom. This is such an exciting card. I'm glad that we don't get these that often in the UFC anymore, it feels like. So I'm excited. Let me know what you think about the picks. Let me know what you think. Where do you disagree? Where do you agree? Who are you big on? And I look forward to that. So I'll check back in here soon with y'all, and I'll talk to you then.